So let me give you a quick tip on how to relatively quickly improve your attention span, probably like today, within the next couple days. And that's actually to start reading books, reading more difficult books or articles or whatever, but let me explain. So essentially, I don't think attention span is something where you have good attention span or bad attention span. I think just like your fitness, it's something that is constantly changing over time depending on how you're using it. So let me give you an example. About a month ago, I fell into this period where I was scrolling a lot on Instagram Reels. And then this kind of thing happens to me all the time, where I'll fall into periods where I'm brain rotting away on Instagram Reels, on Chinese Reels. There's many different things. YouTube Shorts. Bro, who uses YouTube Shorts? And when I fell into that period, I noticed my attention span was getting worse. So it was much more difficult for me to sit down and focus. I couldn't even do laundry without needing a soundtrack playing in the background to keep me constantly stimulated. I couldn't sit down without feeling like my life, my existence was painful. I needed something to do. And before that, I was happily sitting in the grass and like looking at the tree without needing some kind of stimulation. So I feel like essentially when I went to that period where I was on Instagram Reels, it was like my attention span was getting worse. Because when you go on Instagram Reels, basically you're training your brain that every 30 to 60 seconds, you're gonna get something new, something fresh. So here's why reading books will actually help you. Because when you sit down and you read a book, if you've been on Reels for a while and your attention span sucks, you're gonna read for 30 seconds, right? You're gonna go down the page and you're gonna read for 30 seconds. And your brain's gonna be like, give us a brand new reel, bro. Give us something new to chew on. And what you're gonna experience is you're gonna experience pain. You're gonna feel like shit. I don't feel like reading right now. You're gonna daydream. You're constantly gonna think about random things because, okay, let me give you an example. Recently, I've been reading this book, The Prince, by Niccolo Machiavelli, which is this book about, technically it's not even a book, it's difficult to read. And this is the point I'm trying to make, read difficult books. Because it's a book that's literally wasn't even meant to be read. Because essentially what it is it was written in the 1500s. And basically this guy, Niccolo Machiavelli, was writing a letter to the Prince of Florence at the time, telling him to bring him back into the government. Because basically he got exiled because they thought he was a traitor. And so this book he wrote to the prince was literally just a way for the prince to gain power in the country. So it's essentially a book about how to gain power, how power works. It's very, very dark. There's some really dark tactics in there, but it's giving me like some interesting insights into how power works, that kind of thing. And so the point I'm trying to make is it's a difficult read. It was written in the 1500s in Italian. It was translated. It wasn't even meant to be read. So literally what's happening is I'm reading it, and I have to constantly go back to the beginning of the chapter. I have to constantly reread paragraphs. I'm sitting there and I'm like daydreaming. I'm thinking about other things. I'm starting to feel sleepy. I want to go to sleep, that kind of thing. My brain is throwing every possible tactic at me to ask me, to beg me to get a brand new reel into my field of existence. And so the reason reading difficult stuff helps so much is you're essentially retraining your brain. Every time it gets difficult, your brain is begging you to get a new reel. And essentially what you're doing is you're saying, no brain, we don't do reels here, bro. We don't do reels. We continue on this exact shit that we're doing. And so every time you start daydreaming, every time you start feeling like sleeping, every time you get some random ass excuse to stand up and go lie down, that's essentially your brain attempting to beg you to go on a reel. And every time you resist it and you come back to the thing you're doing, you're essentially strengthening your attention span, and your brain will beg you less and less and less. And so this is what I've been noticing. Basically, it's meant to be difficult. When it's difficult to read that book, it's painful. You can't focus. It's literally so hard. That's when you know you're increasing your attention span. That's when you know you're making gains. Like they always say that attention span is like a muscle. What the hell does that even mean? Well, basically when you're pushing yourself in the gym, your muscles grow when you push yourself to failure, according to the theory. So it's those reps where it starts to get difficult. That's where the muscle growth happens. Same thing with increasing your attention span. If you're just watching YouTube videos which are designed to be stimulating, designed to constantly switch context to keep your attention on them, then your attention span is not increasing. But when you're reading a book that's actually painful, that takes effort, that requires a lot of thinking, it's not necessarily that the book is too hard for you. It's that you're training your attention span to stay hooked on it. And trust me, when you start to increase your attention span, first of all, you lose interest in reels. I naturally started losing interest in reels because every time I lay down, I didn't feel the need to pull out reels and stimulate myself. Second, I could exist in a more peaceful existence. I didn't need a soundtrack to accompany me when I went to throw away the rubbish. I didn't need to, I didn't wake up looking for my first hit of stimulation. I could actually sit down and stare out my window and live my life and enjoy it. I could stare at the trees or whatever. And I could work, I could actually focus. And so this is the thing, I don't blame reels, because recently if you follow me on Instagram, in January, I was experimenting with posting reels. And not gonna lie, my goal was to post reels every single day for 90 days. But I stopped after like 3 weeks because I realized it was distracting me from my real goal, which was YouTube. But the point is, I started learning a little bit about Instagram strategy and how creators on Instagram navigate the platform. And at least compared to YouTube, it is insanely brain rot. It is crazy, the strategies that they use. For example, and I don't blame them, let me explain. When you're scrolling on Instagram, you're scrolling like this. You've got about 5 seconds to capture someone's attention before they move on from your reel. So if you want someone to watch your shit, you need to, basically one of the tactics is, you need to load the first 5 seconds of the video with so much stimulation that the viewer stays hooked onto you. The other strategy is you need to literally use 3rd grade speaking levels so people can understand you and they don't have to use any brain power to pay attention to you. The third thing is, the strategy on Instagram is to stay as shallow as possible in terms of your content so that people don't have to think when they're on the platform. So these creators literally are creating these reels to be as addicting as possible so that you stay on the platform and you stay paying attention to them and giving Instagram money by watching their ads. So if you don't think Instagram is destroying your attention span, is destroying your dopamine system, it literally is, because these creators create their videos to literally do that, because that's the only way to capture your attention. They need to grab your attention within 5 seconds. They need to stimulate you so you watch their stuff. Now, it's very easy to say like cancel all creators, destroy Instagram because, it's doing this stuff. But we can't blame them. For example, if you've got a really important message to send that you think people need to hear, if you just went onto an Instagram reel and you're like, hey guys, I've got a really important message to send here, bro, improve your mental health. No one would watch that shit. So the way to actually get people to improve their mental health, for example, is to create a reel, stimulate the first 5 seconds, are you someone who's blah, 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 have a million photos coming into the frame, stimulate the hell out of them, keep the language simple, and bring them down your funnel so you can actually help them. So don't blame the creators, don't blame the apps. The other thing is, if we deleted Instagram, it's not like the problem would be solved. A brand new Instagram would come into its place. If we deleted TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram, Facebook Shorts, who uses that? A brand new app would take its place, Shinstamam would take its place, and everyone would flock to that. So it's not a problem with these apps, it's a problem with society, the system we live in. Everyone's plugged in to these attention span grabbing machines. It's kind of like that Wall-E movie where everyone's floating on those cars, constantly watching a movie. They've constantly got stimulation in their brain. But that's actually the beautiful thing. We live in a society where everyone is happily giving up their attention span to make this existence a little bit less painful. And that's your unfair advantage. If you can be that one guy who unplugs from the attention span draining system and actually be able to sit down and come up with some ideas, sit down, stare at his wall and think about how he could improve the world, think how he could make money. If you're someone who can disconnect from these attention span grabbing machines and study, or sit down and actually build a business, put your attention onto one thing for more than an hour at a time, then you've got an advantage, because most people can't even do that. Most people don't get successful not because they don't have the skills, not because they don't have the tactics, but because they can't sit down for more than 1 minute without needing to do something else. And this is the other crazy thing, by the way. Like I said, it's a problem with the system. I know because I checked out Chinese TikTok. It's called Douyin. It is not the brain rot that American TikTok is. That's the thing. When you go on American TikTok, the game is to capture your attention. So they use sex, they use compelling language, they use dopamine to grab your attention. But Chinese social media has these policies in place where you can't do this. There's no sex. It's all about like politics and science and study and all these things. And there's no brain rot capturing your attention. So in a way, those people have less attention span draining problems than us. So at least that's my guess. So if you can be one of those people who disconnects from the system of entertainment and go create your own world, live in the real world. By the way, YouTube is not immune to this. YouTube, as much as I'm talking on YouTube here right now, but as someone who makes YouTube videos, I might lose some audience by saying this. I don't watch a lot of YouTube these days. At least, YouTube changed my life, not gonna lie, but I don't watch it nearly as much as I used to. I honestly, when it comes to like learning something, I just go to books. Because YouTube is, again, these creators use these tactics to grab your attention. Now, maybe a video like this with no editing might be slightly better, but I mean, is it better than a book? Arguably not. Arguably a book is better because it's actually hard. Maybe, depending on my speaking skills, maybe this video was not that difficult for you to pay attention to. And look, I'm not saying you should never watch videos and stuff. At least if possible, lean towards those longer, less edited videos. I've got some videos that are very, very edited. Maybe stay away from those. Go to the more like long form kind of videos with less editing. But honestly, the big thing I'll tell you is try to get away from YouTube as well. Like, I know this is going to destroy my followers by saying this, but disconnect from YouTube as much as possible, honestly. I simply got addicted to YouTube. I was spending hours a day on it, and that's not a good thing. It's better to like go out into the real world, actually read longer shit, challenge your mind, create stuff. But that's a topic for another day. I think, what is the role in social media in our lives? I'm not 100% sure, but that's all I've got for you. Read books, challenge your attention span. It's your unfair advantage. Adios.